Adding layers within ArcGIS Online. Let's face it, this map is pretty interesting the first couple of times you click on it. It's a nice digital map of the world, but after a while there's really no data on the map, and you, and more importantly your students, will get bored just searching for their house or their aunt's house or baseball stadiums. And so you need to add information to this map in order to make GIS relevant to our students and to make GIS useful. Basically, without information added to the map, it's just a map. And so to add information to your map, you have to be signed into your organizational account. That is exceptionally important. So let's go ahead and start adding some information to this map to kind of enrich its content. So we'll start by clicking on the Add button. And we're going to explore two ways to add data to our map. We're going to explore the Search for Layers function and the Browse Living Atlas Layers function. Let's begin with the Search for Layers function. By default, when you search for layers, it searches within your organizational account's content. If you've just started your organizational account, you probably won't have much, if any, content within it. This is a account I had from teaching middle school. This is a middle school account, and you can see I have 174 various layers within there. The real information is contained within the ArcGIS Online layers. And so go from My Content and toggle down to ArcGIS Online. And you can see there's over 1 million layers available. Now clearly we don't have all the time it takes to search through 1 million layers to see something that's relevant to our classroom content. But you can search, and let's search for disease. Say you're a science teacher and you're doing a lesson on epidemiology, or perhaps you're a PE teacher and you want to look at heart disease. And imagine that heart disease is one of the first layers to pop up. And you can see just by typing in disease, we end up with 1,422 layers. Now some of these layers are going to be better than others. Some of them are going to be published by reputable sources like the CDC, whereas others, they could be layers that were created by students in a high school classroom. They may be reputable, but they might not be something you want to use for your own classroom work. If you want a description of the layer, click on the title. A lot of people think just by clicking on the title it's going to add the layer to the map. That's not how it works. If you know what the layer is and you've used it before and you just want to quickly put it on your map, you can use this add button here at the bottom. But it's always a good idea, especially the first time you're using the layer, to just click on the description. And you can see that this is actually a Living Atlas layer. More on the Living Atlas in a bit, but so that just basically means that this information is updated quite a bit. And so we can go through and we see all of the data that's there to back up this information, the methodology used in collecting it, etc. And so you can add it to the map by clicking here, Add to Map, or you can click on the plus button. And once it loads, you have a data set on your map. So we'll take a closer look at this data set as it's on the map. To close out of the search bar, you can just click back on Details, or you can click on this little arrow here. So we have a lot of red on this map. We don't necessarily know what each of these different shadings of red means, so a good way to see that would be to click on our legend. And this is U.S. heart disease mortality rates. And we can go back into the description to figure out how this data is calculated, what these numbers actually mean. You can zoom into the map, click on specific counties, and get more detailed information. And in fact, what you're getting in this is, this is the county code, county name, and then population demographics for each county, and population demographics and how they relate to heart disease. And so, definitely I could see if you're a PE teacher, a health teacher, you want to look at who's at greater risk for cardiovascular disease within your own particular county. This would be an interesting layer. So say you're you're a social studies teacher, but you're looking to collaborate with a specialist teacher or a PE teacher, here's a way that you can merge data science and geography and mapping with health and PE. I'm going to show how to remove that layer now. You just click on Content, click on this horizontal ellipse, and select Remove. Now, when I go back to the Search for Layers function, it's going to default to the previous search that I've had. And so let's say that's not really what I'm interested in. I'm more interested in the American Revolution. So let's see if there are any layers that deal with that. And so there we go. We have some base maps about the American Revolution, battles of the American Revolution, and you can see that these would be ones, because the name doesn't say CDC or National Geographic or Esri or ArcGIS Online, you might want to just click on it and take a brief look at the actual data set for that. And so there's, the description is kind of vague. You can go out and see their user profile if you wanted to, but you could also just roll the dice and add it to the map and give it a look and see how the information is. And so it's added to the map. Let's go and find it. So I don't see it anywhere where I have my map set, and that's because there weren't a whole lot of American Revolution battles out here. There were a few, but not many. So if I click here on this More Options, I can zoom to this layer, and it'll show me that this layer is showing a lot of the battles along the East Coast. Okay. Scholars of the American Revolution will know that there was a battle out here in Indiana, and so just by clicking on it, we can kind of see. Well, actually, they don't have any real data on this, so this is maybe not a layer I want to use with my students. So I'll just select Remove, and I'll go back into my search, and I'll just kind of continue looking for better layers. Okay, and the more information you give the search, the better your search is going to be. The more you can refine it down to what you're looking for. David Rumsey maps are tremendous. I don't know if anyone has ever used those. David Rumsey is a collector of historical maps, and most of his, or a large portion of his maps have been digitized and hosted through ArcGIS Online. So we'll just search for David Rumsey maps, and you can see 85 layers, and these are all historical maps, period maps. These are primary source documents that have been digitized. This is a great way to introduce your students to historical GIS. I used it quite a bit when I was teaching US history. When I was teaching geography, we would talk about how maps change over time and how you get a better, you get more refined information as time goes on. And so I added the Rumsey North America 1811 map. And I'm going to close out of this just so we can take a look. And as I zoom out, this map is probably going to get less detailed. Now I've zoomed into where the detail is set. And this map, we're beholden to the detail that's on this map. And so if I zoom in more, you're going to see that map disappears, because the North America 1811 map is set to a specific perspective on ArcGIS Online. There's no more detail on the town of Huntington, Pennsylvania. If I zoom in, I'm not going to get images of the Juniata River and its confluence with the Susquehanna River, etc. Any more than what's right there. It's going to disappear eventually. But certainly the David Rumsey maps are just a treasure trove of information for teachers of history, geography, and even just people who like to look at old maps. There's one, I believe there's one of Chicago. Chicago 1869, kind of showing, you know, the early days of the city. You can really kind of, if you compare this with, say, a New York map, you can kind of see the planning that was involved in Chicago at one point versus, you know, kind of the, you know, haphazard nature of New York. And so that's searching for layers through ArcGIS Online. I'm going to exit out of this, and I'm actually going to remove the Rumsey map. Just like we looked at the heart map earlier, the heart disease map, if you're really interested in data and demographics and numbers, let's say you teach sociology, you teach economics, you teach consumer science, and you want data, relevant modern data about specific areas, that's where you want to use the Living Atlas. And you'll see that my David Rumsey search is still there. We need to clear that out. And you can see that there's a bunch of Living Atlas layers, 3,504. Let's search for spending. And I can see that some of these layers, you know, USA retail goods spending, you know, this is basically, if we click on it, it gives us a description. This layer shows the average amount spent on retail goods per household in the United States in 2018. And you can see that this one goes into multiple levels: country, state, city, zip code, tract, and block group. Just a, you know, this is an amazing map to look at patterns of economics throughout the country. Just add it on there real quick, and I'll show you some items of scale that this map deals with. If we look, and as I look at the legend, it's now zoomed into the county perspective. Okay, it's showing spending per county. If I zoom in further, it will give me by zip code. And so there's actually multiple layers of data within this one particular layer. I can actually zoom back out, and it should, if it's set that way, county might be the lowest perspective that we get. Sometimes these maps are set up by state as well. But you can certainly see with this, you know, if you're looking at patterns of urbanization, if you're looking in geography class, if you're looking at areas of economic, you know, if you're looking at, you know, where are the more economically affluent areas within a state, this is a good map to kind of show that. And you can look at how those economically affluent areas coincide with urban areas, etc. And so that's just one of the Living Atlas layers. Go back into the Living Atlas, and you can actually filter. So we have it set up for spending. And I'm going to zoom over, and we can see that there's, you know, that was a layer that dealt with the United States. What if I want to deal with maybe just places in Europe? If I click on this filter, I can now filter by region. I can filter by country. So if I want to see, are there any spending layers available for France? And it shows me that there are, you know, 9 layers available. Purchasing power per capita. You know, how much is spent on the cinema. Okay, and so this is all available through the Living Atlas. Living Atlas layers are tremendous because they're updated. They reflect relatively current demographic data. They reflect relatively current spending, voting. You know, if you're talking about elections, you want to talk about voting. Well, we still have France as our region set. So now we have 13 voting layers that deal with the United States. If you are a teacher of any of the social studies, you can totally get lost within the Living Atlas. There's a web page that deals with the Living Atlas. If you just go to Google and you type in Esri Living Atlas, it will bring you to this web page. It talks you all through Living Atlas, what it is. There's different blogs on there about different studies that were done based on Living Atlas layers. So ArcGIS, adding layers through the search for layers function and the Living Atlas. There's also a tip sheet on the Canvas section of the classroom for you to get a little bit more information about this.